Bill.
Hey, Michael.
I'm gonna ping Larsh, because I know the last couple of weeks because the days were different, he got his, or not the day of the week was different, but we were missing days of, never mind. I was just gonna ping you, Larsh, in case you were on a bike ride.
Nope, right here.
Let me drop the Etherpad link. Into there, into the chat. And I'm also going to drop the Open Infra. I'll drop that one later. The Open Infra Lab stuff. So on the Etherpad, we had a beginning of an agenda. But it sounds like a few people are still joining, so maybe we'll wait a moment. And as always, please participate in the Etherpad. If you see typos or things that you want to make sure get captured, throw them in. It'll make for better notes. Why don't we start? Are there any changes people wanted to suggest for the agenda before we jump in? Do it. Okay. Larsh, would you mind giving an update on the CNV project?
Sure. Let's see, it's slow going, but we have got to the point that we're actually booting machines and getting past all the issues we had with network configuration and routing and hardware configuration and all that. So there's been progress. We're at the stage that if we cross our fingers and wish that we might have a installation running today or tomorrow, or we'll discover the next new problem. So that's where we are right now with the CNV install.
Cool. Do folks on the call know, I'm not sure if everybody on the call knows what CNV is. I wonder if it's worth giving a quick.
Sure. CNV means Container Native Virtualization, and it is it means running virtual machines on top of Kubernetes. So using Kubernetes as your virtual machine orchestrator rather than, say, OpenStack. The upstream project is called KNI, I think, Kubernetes Native Infrastructure, maybe? I'm actually not sure. And then within Red Hat, it's called CNV, and it's a product that we're actually releasing with OpenShift 4.4. I'm not sure if it's tech preview or not with that release, but it exists.
I can't actually tell from the way my screen is laid out right now if Justin is also here yet or not. But Augustine, can you give an update on where we're at with NERC?
Not much of an update. We're still kind of working through details, installing, breaking things, reinstalling. I believe Justin is also looking at some additional network deployments using Mellanox switches. That's somewhat about where things are. We don't have anything glorious to show you.
That's a good stage to be though, because it means that we're making forward progress. It's real as opposed to not real. For those of the call who aren't familiar with it, the NERC is a collaboration between Boston University and Harvard University that is going to bring a SLA supported with more importantly facilitators who can help researchers. They're bringing that cloud up. It's the plan initially is for it to be OpenStack based, and lots of interest in the work we're doing with CNV as a potential future. There was, Bill, do you want to talk about item 3 a little bit?
Sure, happy to. I'm Bill Burns, by the way, anybody else know me. In Red Hat, there's a couple of different teams that have been working on monitoring, which is one of the key items that we feel are needed for successful open source clouds. And they're planning to sync up and get together. One team is focused on OpenStack, another one's on OpenShift. And these are the engineers that work with the various upstream projects to build monitoring out of. And we're really looking to get them some input as they plan to meet in July to evaluate requirements, all the requirements they get from different places. And it's a great opportunity, I think, for our efforts around open operations, open cloud, operate first, all of this, that to get good user stories and requirements into that forum so that things are, they have as much data to go on as possible. So I listed here, I pinged some of the engineers and got a list of some of the different upstreams and projects that they consume, use, influence, whatever. And you know, we have multiple aspects, I think, in the monitoring space. We have a fairly diverse community that we've been talking about monitoring for a few weeks. And, you know, from HPC to, you know, managing your cloud, understanding your capacity, consumption, future planning, dealing with events that occur, you know, to work around problems, health of the cloud, input to AI tools that are looking to be developed, you know, to aid in cloud management and all of that. So it's a pretty wide scope of things. And what I would love to see us be able to do in the community side is flesh out user stories. I think Michael has that as a next topic, you know, but specifically around the monitoring and the needs, whether, you know, a cloud owner, cloud administrator, you know, someone writing tools to help manage the cloud, whatever, and get as much data as we can so that we can feed that to this forum of engineers that will be influential in providing good tooling. So
with that one, we figured if we can, they're planning a meeting sometime in, I think, mid-July. So we figured if we can have our sense of what things we want to see pulled together by the 8th, by the meeting the week before that we're having, I think I put the date in there. Yeah, the July 8th meeting, then we can do a review and just make sure that we're happy with what we're rolling to them.
You know, and we can discuss this in all the meetings leading up to that, but we could also, you know, start a dialogue on the mailing list with people sending out their ideas, and, you know, then whip those into shape. Any way, the more information we can get, I think the better off we'll be. And they don't all have to agree. You know, people have different needs and wants, and we just want to make sure that they're all enumerated.
So I also wanted to take a minute and welcome Idon and Ilana, who are joining us. They've been doing a lot of work with us on the CNV project. There's actually a line item here that was number 5, because previously we had talked about having a discussion about long-term metrics and storage. And that's an area that I think Idon and Ilana have been talking about and writing some really excellent documentation around, which I think may flow into the next item, which was the epics and the stories. I want to pause before we jump into that to see if there were any questions or any other topics that people wanted to make sure we talked about or talk about more. Yay. I'm not getting any changes, which means, Bill, I guess we did a good job of thinking through the agenda this week.
Or I put people to sleep.
It's quite possible. So I'm going to share screen, or at least share part of my screen. So in Open Infrastructure Labs is the NERC architecture project. Please let me know if the size of the text on the screen is legible to you guys, because I can adjust it a little bit if it helps.
I can see it fine here.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume it's good unless somebody tells me otherwise.
Michael, this is the NERC. When the NERC architecture here is the NERC for the data, the 20-something petabyte infrastructure, or is it something else?
The NERC is, I always confuse it. So Augustine, is it Northeast or New England? I think it's New England. The New England Research Cloud, as opposed to NESE, which is the Northeast Storage Exchange.
Oh, okay, okay.
These names,
You need
those
more
names
letters, please.
yeah, there are too many confusing names, unfortunately. Sorry?
Oh, it is New England, yes.
It is New England. I usually have to say it wrong before my brain jumps in and corrects me. So NERC architecture is the place that we've been using within GitLab to work on the epics and stories that we're trying to implement. And they are, the epics and the user stories at this point are generally one-liners. I mean, that's what we sort of, I'm hoping we can do here is flesh out, not flesh out the stories necessarily here today, but identify people who we can assign these stories to flesh them out because they have subject matter expertise. So are folks familiar with the epic and story model? Or should I spend a minute talking about that?
Well, Michael, before you get into that, it's with that question about NERC, maybe people don't understand its purpose, and that it's a new cloud similar to Mass Open Cloud, which is designed to really feed the research community, and it's going to basically offload the Mass Open Cloud, and a lot of those workloads will move to the New England Research Cloud. So just for the folks that maybe don't have that history, it's good to know that you can almost put it in the same bucket as the Mass Open Cloud. I'm getting feedback here, but hopefully that helps.
I think, Augustine, I hope I pronounce it right. You have feedback from your end. If you could mute, please.
Oh,
We'll find out in a second.
I'm sorry.
It's
Well,
somebody else too, I think.
So as we, it may be confusing to people seeing that this GitLab thing is under the NERC banner, but really what we're collecting is requirements, yes, for NERC, but for Mass Open Cloud, any open cloud as for what is needed. And so monitoring is one of those areas here. So anyway, hopefully that helps.
It does. I will not steal more time, but I really do need some more background. There are too many acronyms that are thrown around, and try to get the hang of it takes a lot of time. But thank you.
We have a meeting scheduled. I'll be happy to explain more. So
thank you.
My brain just shut off. I'm trying to remember the section of the book where you put all the definitions.
The glossary?
Thank you. I couldn't get glossary to save my life just then.
Well, maybe you need a dictionary.
maybe you had your appendix.
I was using the wisdom of the crowd, and it worked.
Lars, I really admire your sense of humor, those little touches, really. I really love them. Thank you. Keep it.
The thing that's disturbing to me is I get a fair number of the puns, but I'm always wonder how many I'm missing. So I've added an epic to create a glossary because I think that's a really good point. I'm going to assign that one, if I can remember how to do this, to me. I think everybody on the call, with the possible exception of Matthias, already has access as a developer on this stuff. And I will fix that. Or actually, if somebody else on the call who, I think Lars, you have access to do that, would you mind adding Matthias as a developer?
I would not mind at all. I need to know, Matthias, your GitLab ID. which you're welcome to just request to join the thing and I'll approve it.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll do.
So I'll assign that one to me, and I don't know if it'll do this. Hey, it does. I'll assign that to Bill and I.
What did you assign to Bill and you? Oh, making the glossary?
Making a glossary.
Yes, okay.
So integration with Exceed. Augustine, I suspect you are the person on the call who best can explain what Exceed is. I apologize for throwing you to the wolves this way.
That's quite okay. Just pulling up the nodes. Integration with Exceed. So there are some. Exceed is a national resource for research computing, and there are clouds that are operating as part of that project. So I think Scott Yokel and Wayne Gilmore might be able to tell you more about this, but the idea is to collaborate with these projects and see how we can work together. I don't have anything as far as specific integration that's on the roadmap right now, but I think we're very interested in other people doing similar things, and because Exceed, BU researchers as well as Harvard researchers, it's a national resource. We would have same people running workloads on both NERC as well as Exceed. So that's why I think it's on the list.
Is it reasonable to, I don't have Justin yet as a, hold on, I muted you, Augustine, sorry. I don't have Justin yet on the approved list. I sent him an invite last night, but it was late last night. Is it okay if I assign this to you initially and add him as the folks who will, at a high level, just flesh out what are the things that we expect, and you guys can run that down with Scott and Wayne? Cool. Thank you. And the other piece, Don, that I just realized we hadn't discussed a few minutes ago is that NERC is also sort of user number one of the Open Infrastructure Lab stack. And so that's part of why when we first set this up, we called it, we called this part of the project NERC architecture. But this work is going to also flow into what we're doing for Open Infra Labs. Hello. HIPAA compliant OI lab stack. This is an interesting one because it was something we had always had on our part of our long-term vision, but because of COVID, there may be an increased focus on this. And so I asked the folks at Boston Children's Hospital for a list of what they require as their monitoring, logging, and audit trail for their HIPAA compliant stacks. And when I get that, with their permission, I'll drop that in here. But I don't know if there are other folks in the organization or in this call who have experience with HIPAA that are interested in this piece of it. So I'm asking that sort of as an open query for folks. I'm going to take the silence as please don't throw me into that HIPAA compliance and stuff. Everyone I know who's in that space looks scarred. Okay, so I guess that'll be me until I can suck in the guys from Boston Children's. There's a notification epic, and then I hope we also created. There were two epics. Hey Bill, it was notification and there was a second one, and I feel like we didn't create the second one, or I didn't create the second one. But I wanted you to spend a minute talking about those two. Should I pop up the spreadsheet you had created, or do you want to? Oh, sorry, you're muted, Bill.
Sorry, sure, that's fine. Yeah.
because I think there's a second epic that we didn't throw in here. Let me grab that really quickly. Or if you grab it before me, let me know. You may have an easier time finding it.
I'll try.
Spreadsheet.
Yeah, I've got it now.
Well, let me make sure you have permissions to share. Security. Cool.
Yeah, we had an event notification epic and a monitoring epic with several items under each. So,
Are you sharing?
no, I'm not.
Oh. Do you want to go ahead and share that? Because I think that it was a useful exercise to look through that. Because Bill has been talking to a bunch of different groups that are doing monitoring and notifications and alerting, he began to notice that there were some gaps in how each of them was thinking about things. And when he walked me through this, it for those of you who are closer to notification, maybe this is obvious, but to me it was helpful as a way to think about it. We started with the definition of types that he captured there.
Yeah, can you see this?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, I did this kind of for my own benefit. I organized my thoughts. So, this first sheet isn't the epics, but the idea was I crossed the top.
Could you please zoom in a little bit?
Sure.
At least for me, it's hard to see.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
I think it's Command
Plus, I think, or View.
Or View Zoom, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That works.
Yeah. That was, yeah.
You can see it now?
No, you haven't clicked the 150.
Okay.
Or
There we go.
That better?
Better.
Yeah, just a quick background here. I across the top, I kind of listed the different categories, events, which low-level things that need to be acted upon immediately, and they can't afford to be going through a lot of collection and analysis necessarily. Then metrics, which is operation of the cloud and helps in the planning and usage and that type of stuff. Logging is important, and then alerts, which alerts and events often seem to get confused. And to me, alerts are generated out of the metrics and the logging by harvesting data out of there, where events are more tied to a low level, either hardware or a platform error condition or whatever. And we have tickets on there too, problem reports against the cloud are valuable input, into some of these types of things. And then workload status, that's like what the consumer of the cloud needs. So I was trying to, in my mind, divide these things up into the different categories. And then under the epics tab Michael created, we came up with these items, event notification epic. As a system administrator, I want notification of events which will cause downtime, outages, and be able to rapidly address the issue. And then as a system administrator, I want notification of events so I can notify my users, right? And then a monitoring is a less urgent, if you will, than the events, and there's a few things written here. I'm not going to read them all. You can just take a look at them. So
those will need to get, I apologize. I started flowing those in, and then a day and a half intervened, and I forgot that we had done this exercise, and I put in a bunch of other ones.
No, it's on me too. I really want to put these into the GitLab
Hey, Bill?
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing if all those definitions will be there and accessible for the open community. The way you explained that, maybe for more experienced people, it's something that is known. And even for me, I learned something from those definitions and the way you separate them.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. We'll get, maybe I'll even, share this board and this spreadsheet and people can play with it there, but we'll get the data in there. That's a commitment.
Okay, so Bill,
Yeah.
your your description of events on this screen focuses primarily on failures, but events are not necessarily errors or failures. There are a variety of events that you may want to track that are none of those things, that you may want for billing purposes. You want to know when things are created and when things are destroyed. You may want them for resource tracking purposes. So I guess the focus on failures here, I think, is makes this inaccurate.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of that data that you need for those things, Lars, in my mind, kind of come out of the metrics or the monitoring piece.
Well, right, no, but the point is, though, that those are two very different things. Metrics, you are collecting typically aggregate statistics over time.
Okay.
An event is a point in time where something specific has happened, and you track that differently, often with different tools. So again, the focus on failures here, I think, needs to be changed.
Okay.
So an interesting question that I had then is, after you type that, Bill, if you want to jump back to that first tab, or
Okay.
So some of this I had thrown into the notification epic as a top level definitions, but what it made me think of now.
What do you want in the first tab?
No, I wanted to see the definitions again. So I think that what we kept struggling with, we actually did a mind map of this, was events and alerts. It felt like there was overlap. There are probably alerts that get generated about, so the example we used of an event was the power has gone down to your rack. That would be an event that you would want to know about immediately and get some notification of. So
sure, but alerts are a very different thing, right? Alerts mean something that comes to you as a person. It interrupts you. It does something to make you take notice. And those could be tied to events. They could be tied to monitoring data also.
Mm-hmm.
Can I share for a sec, Bill? Do you mind?
No, go for it. No, I think Lars has a great point, and we need to make sure we capture that aspect of recording things as they happen, which are events, and that are not errors. And I think that the reason that I've tried to highlight the critical events, the ones that could induce downtime, is because I think people a lot of times talk about alerts in a way that they just think, well, alerts cover it all. And, if alerts are generated from, metrics and logging and overall system information, there's a real time lag there that can impact the availability. So I just want to make sure that's separate, but you're absolutely right. I'll make it clear that events can be point in time critical information that you need, not necessarily to avoid downtime, but to record.
Yeah, and what sticks in my mind, Michael, is that when we were discussing billing tools with Rob, he really prefers the event data as the source of billing information, because he wants to know when was something created, when did it go away, and be able to track that for a variety of resources for purposes of accounting.
Yeah, what I'm trying to figure out is what's going on in my brain. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I suspect that there's a subset of us that care a lot about this, and there's a subset of us that are like, yeah, this is important. I'm glad you guys are talking about it. I don't want to be there. What I was thinking through is it in fact that is the point that is important to take away, is one of the points that is important to take away, not the only point, that the events also need to be captured positive and negative?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So I'm just going to
add event can also be, let's say, in a data processing mechanism when you have data coming in. So it's an event that the data was written for this bucket, for example, and then he drives a notification or drives a pipeline just for an event. It could be even a bucket was destroyed. Is it positive? Is it negative? It's dependent on your view. Right. Yeah. A large point here is precise.
I'm capturing my understanding, but everybody else, by all means, clarify away, and then we'll modify the top level stuff, and that'll flow into the stories that we write.
I think, Michael, you make a good point that, we could do a separate offline call, or we could schedule.
Email. Or we could use that email thread like you suggested.
Or we can, schedule like this is a major topic next week for people to focus on. But I think this is exactly what we need to do, to flesh out, a set of requirements that we can make sure that the people that are working on this stuff understand, and that it's clear. So, this is a great discussion.
So at a top level for this epic, who are the people who have an interest, who want to be involved in working on it, that we can sort of flag out here?
I do.
I do too, although, yes. Okay. Sorry, the reason why I sound iffy on this one, Michael, is because we've been talking about events and alerts as two separate things, but now this one says notifications, and I'm not sure where that sits.
So as we talked, what we realized was there is the notification process there, which is sort of separate from alerts and events and monitoring and metrics. In other words, maybe it's PagerDuty, maybe it's SMS, maybe it's Grafana. It's how we get notified that some event is happening that we care about.
So see, to me, that's alerts. If you are receiving information that something has happened that you care about, you've got an alert, and that's part of your alerting tools is how do you deliver that notification to someone? How do you aggregate notifications so that if like you unplug the power to a rack, you don't get 42 different notifications for each server that's down? All of those things they're all linked together. How do you decide who they go to? How do you decide to escalate an alert if it doesn't get responded to in a certain amount of time? That's all kind of.
So the only part that led us down the path of thinking about notification as separate from alerts was, and we may be saying that we need to change these definitions, was that distinction between the definition that we were working from of events versus alerts.
But why would you? So notification means you've received something that's interrupted your workday.
Depends. So for example, if I have a Grafana page which is being used by a consumer of resources, they may not be using it. They're getting notified, but they're getting notified through their choice. They're not getting an alert about it. They're going and they're looking.
If they're looking at a Grafana page, I would argue that they are looking at a dashboard, and that is a, typically a time series visualization. It's not a notification.
So Lars, let me tackle this one more view here, just to the thing that I've heard people using the term alerts, and maybe the terms need to change, that they can be generated from analyzing, logging data and metric data that's happening in the cloud. Yes. And there's an inherent time delay in that type of stuff, right? And we're just trying to call out that there's a need, when they generate an alert, because you see that, you're at capacity and you need to take some action to, keep the cloud running efficiently or whatever, that's something it's somewhat urgent and all that, but it's not like all of a sudden we just lost a chunk of our data center.
Right. So typically your alerts have a priority level. They can be generated either from events or from analyzing metric data. So, but what identifies them all as an alert is that it is something that has come to you, right, to identify this is something you need to look at, and it may have a priority associated with it, whether you
something you need to act upon.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree completely.
So what I'm trying to figure out here is, what do we mean by notification? Because what Michael was saying about someone is watching a Grafana page, that's not a notification. A notification is a delivery. A notification is something has happened.
Maybe it helps here to add a notification to the definition here. And a notification would be something what reaches you. like as hey, here's a note or something is burning, but
Right, an SMS or could a pop up in your browser or
yeah,
something.
In this case, it doesn't really matter. It's just something get delivered to you.
Yeah.
And an alert would be like a rule acting on events or metrics or a combination of metrics and logging and so on. And that can create a notification.
Okay.
Or issue a notification.
Okay.
I guess
So,
my question.
so then following that definition, Matthias, then you would alert is not an alert is just a state that doesn't necessarily correspond. It may or may not correspond to delivering notifications to someone. It may deliver multiple notifications. It may deliver 0.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially since not all people want to get a notification if the data center is burning, for example.
Okay. I think that is a good definition.
Take a look at what I typed there and tell me if it captures it. Do I need to make that larger?
That looks good in my eyes.
That's fine.
Okay. So rule based on metrics or logging or events?
Yes.
Sure.
And then my other question is, does the addition of that definition make this epic worthy of being an epic? Or can we in fact spread this across other things, taking this into account?
I'm not sure that by itself it's an epic. Because I think it's going to be tied so closely to other stuff.
Okay, so let me, in this note, flag that. It's just so that we remember.
I would argue that this will be tied very tightly to alerting, because you'll decide what are the things that constitute alerts, and then you'll decide how and to whom are those alerts going to be delivered.
So that's how I'm capturing it in here, so that we're consciously, as we think this through and work on it a little bit more between this week and next week and the week after, we're consciously going, oh, you know what? Maybe this doesn't make sense. Like, I don't want us to become so wed to a structure that I arbitrarily created at you know, that I want us to do what's right, not I want us to do the right thing, not the thing that's captured by the map.
And to me, let me just say that what I'm trying to capture, if you think about just like the way a basic computer works, right, with interrupts versus polling type access, I wanted to make sure that that polling wasn't the only thing that folks are looking to design all the monitoring around.
Oh, we're not. We're obviously including events as a first-class piece of data.
Yeah, well, not everybody has done that, and I think people have looked at alerts generated from looking at what's happening on the system after some processing and some logging and moving from here to there or whatever, with a significant amount of delay. That I want to make sure that those folks understand that there's a need for the short, quick path, fast path of certain things happening to generate an alert right away that someone reacts to, so the definitions are kind of crafted to try and make that point. So just a little background.
Are there other people who would like to be associated with this particular epic? Who are on the
I'm thinking about volunteering Ilana here, because I will not want to diminish her, because she's less experienced here. She could at least be like a reviewer to read what you put in here and say what she understood and what she can take from that, and then we could find out if our definitions are accessible.
she's also a really, really thoughtful writer based on the documents I've written.
Yeah.
I've read by her. So yay.
Yeah. The more the merrier.
And then GitLab is feeling slow today. Interactions with XDMod. I dropped a really brief thing about what XDMod is in here. I'm sort of, Augustine, I'm sort of assuming that that's some combination of you and maybe Christy and Justin, once I know what his account is. It's sort of the front end that does interactions with the existing HPC clusters, and there's a process going on to add support for the cloud into that, and we know that it's going to be something that is needed for the NERC and other research universities.
Accounting for the usage, and yes.
So, and because of Christy's experience with building the onboarding system, I figure it's probably the right match. Although Christy, you're being quiet, and I don't want to throw you at something without you having a chance to be like, no, please don't make me do that.
Was in tacit agreement.
Okay, cool. I was afraid you might be screaming into mute. No. Are there other people who have an interest in that in this grouping? Okay. Make operational data available to open source communities. I apologize because I have a mental map that somebody was going to give some more examples, or not. I have a mental map. I apologize to Marcel because he sent me a note which I had one of those classics respond and leave it open and then close Outlook and not send it. And I only realized that as I was looking at this list a few minutes ago and went to peek in my Outlook. So I apologize, Marcel. I will send you the link to this after. This was the place I was hoping you were going to drop stuff. And I don't know if you were here when we talked about HIPAA compliance.
No, I wasn't. And now I see the epic. So I'm going to send that data to that issue.
Yeah, I apologize. I one of the many things that I do more often than I wish is that. So I'm going to add your name to this. For now. Are there other people on the call who have an interest in this? I'm pretty sure I'm going to be tied to it because once we have that data, I'm going to be socializing it with the research boards. The thing I had said about Boston Children's Hospital earlier was there's a HIPAA compliance epic that I stuck in there as a placeholder. With COVID going on, there's an increased prioritization of doing some HIPAA work. With this, I don't yet know what that means, but I've asked the folks at Boston Children's Hospital to give us all the information they can about what they're capturing for logging and auditing and monitoring. My thinking being that will sort of be a maximum set, and then we can look at that and maybe use that as a basis for some of the things. There may be things in there that we go, oh yes, we should monitor that, but maybe not as long or maybe not as much. And there will probably be things in that we just don't think we need to monitor, but that a separate HIPAA compliant Open Infra Lab stack would make sense to monitor. So we'll have potentially two different sets of data that we can use to bring to those review boards.
So Michael, to answer your earlier question, who's interested in this, I have some interest in this topic.
Okie dokie. Anybody else?
Although if it translates into lots of meetings, I may, develop different interests.
The goal is to do few meetings, much email.
Okay.
And I think the major meetings will end up potentially being things where we bring it to a review board and they have questions. is my guess. Um, establish an architecture for the monitoring platform. I have guesses about who should be on this, but I'm looking for volunteers.
Ilana, you're muted.
I'll be on it.
Obviously, I'm interested in this.
I raised my hand, Michael.
Oh, you know what? I need to figure out, hold on. Ha! I just figured out a way to make it so I can see all of you at once. This is awesome. Okay.
Please share. I'm wondering how do I do it myself.
Sorry?
Please share this method.
Well, I have a television that's a 43-inch 4K TV that I converted to my monitor. So first you have
when do I download this?
So first you have to buy a cheap 4K TV.
I understand you're cheap now.
Well, it was a sale. It was on sale. My wife got a really nice monitor, and therefore I could justify spending less than her on a monitor for myself. That was actually how it worked. Matthias, what is your, please tell me your,
I may not be added yet.
Okay.
I've sent the details to Lars.
Oh,
cool.
How did you send them to me?
Via IRC.
Okay. I was assuming you were just going to go to GitLab and ask to join the organization, and then I
Yeah, I did.
It. Oh, okay.
I did as well.
I will check that right now then.
So I'm sorry. Who else? Call off your names. Lars, I know you said you raised your arm or your hand. Who else?
Matthias is approved. He's mrunge, M-R-U-N-G-E.
Yes.
And me, Bill.
Okay, and I think I heard Bill, and I think I saw Augustine raise his hand. Let's actually see what the list looks like now. Ilana, Lars, Matthias, Bill, Augustine. Anybody else?
How this issue is different from the previous one about the notification or?
So we originally wrote this when we were first trying to think through what we were going to do. In my mind, this is kind of the document that you've been working on.
Right. I was going to say this is like about hardware and storage and how is it connected and what's running on top of it.
Yeah. And maybe that means we need to rewrite this section.
Whereas the previous section was the previous thing about notifications was really more about policy in some sense.
Okay.
I'm going to throw the quick one-liner in here that this is about. This is about hardware requirements. Next section was early work to think about.
Oh, shishi.
And we may rewrite that.
Yeah, they are pretty closely related. I mean, that they're.
Yeah.
So.
Festivals like that as a warning.
And then.
Somebody's speaking very faintly, I think.
Oh, was somebody saying something that we should be capturing? Or might have been background noise.
All right.
And I think this was also an early one, and it's about hardware. And this is also tied to some work that's in the process of going on with the NERC and a consulting group at Red Hat that is helping think through what should the hardware look like. I can.
Is that do you mean like the architecture for the new cloud when you say establish the architecture for the NERC?
I want to make sure I unpack that question because I want to make sure I understand that because there's so many different 3-letter and 4-letter acronyms, I want to make sure that I'm answering it the right way. The NERC.
You can also explain to me what do you want to capture here. It's also good.
I think that we had originally created this when we were. This was one of the early epics where we said, "Hey, we need to create an architecture for the NERC." And the architecture, I think, at that point was things like, should we? The initial discussion was, should we use CNV or should we use OpenStack?
But it's also like, if we're running OpenStack, on what? How, how? It's the overall architecture for this whole cloud environment that we're calling the NERC. And it was going to have children such as monitoring architecture,
right,
for specific things.
It sounds similar to the work we're doing in the CNV space, but a little bit bigger, like taking the entire sections of storage and solve it as a whole, and taking the entire section of monitoring and solve it as a whole, and the network, and so on and so forth. Am I
Probably
correct?
Something like that, yes.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's what in some organizations, I'm trying to remember the thing we used to call things that were bigger than epics, but it's basically it's an Uber epic.
Yeah. And I wonder, did we ever get some documents from the consulting people that Lars was working with?
Do you mean Marcel? I know that you're not in our other meeting, but Lars, does Marcel mean the team that we are working with in Israel, or is it someone else?
I think it's Joe Wood's group.
Right. So Joe Wood is leading the consulting organization, and he is helping manage that engagement.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's this overall architecture design. I think that's the daily work of the solution architects, and I'm sure that we have a bunch of stuff that we could reuse there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's great to have the CNV engineering folks here on board, but I'm not sure if like this group should be in the business of drawing nice slides and diagrams.
Yeah.
Especially if we already have them, right?
Yeah. I guess that goes to the question of, is this still an epic that makes sense? Should we be either blowing it up or giving it more content? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. I think it makes sense at some point if we decide on which layers on what, and we can either do it from the bottom up and just implement the stuff that this engineering group here thinks is relevant, or well, get some input from the consulting folks. As you said, I think it's like an Uber epic. If we can nest epics, I don't know if GitLab provides this, then we should put all the other epics under this one.
So one of the things I need to do is actually get some time with one of the people at GitLab. I've read through their stuff. We're going to turn on, once I pick the widest open source license I can, since we're essentially putting a bunch of Ansible scripts up. So I don't know what license we use for that. I've got to figure that out. If people have an opinion, let me know. I'm going to drop that. Basically, we drop that in for Open Infra Labs into a specific spot, and then they'll look at that and go, oh yeah, you're an open source project, and they'll give us access to the epics that they have. we've been doing it by using labels, and it made more sense to, as this got more complex, to
That said, the idea of nesting the other epics under this one, I think, is a good one. And whether we do that with labels or through specific tooling, that's an implementation detail.
Yeah.
If you like, I don't have a lot of capacity, but if someone will work here with me and will have the talk and he would help me with putting the inputs here. I did similar work in my previous role, building this, defining the different layers and structures and components. So at least to help start map it out and putting into the big pillars, and even some insights from meetings that I conducted with Facebook, LinkedIn, and even Google of how they do that, how they are doing that. So I would love to contribute, but I do not have a lot of capacity, but I would love to give my thoughts on that.
Cool.
I think I have some documentations from that period.
Hey, Don, what is, I thought I already had you in here, but maybe I don't. If you can let us know or if you can go to the Open Infrastructure Labs and request access, we'll just go ahead and grant it. And I'll mention down here, Don interested in at least providing input on this. Are there other folks who are interested in this one, or is this one that we should sort of capture or revisit over time?
You can add me also. I will. I hope I have insights to give also.
Cool. Okay. And then sort of the other question, so my goodness, that went quick. We only have 2 more minutes left. I'm going to quickly jump back to the Etherpad for a second to talk about next week. Don, Ilana, is it reasonable to think that you guys would be able to talk about the long-term metrics and storage documentation that you guys had been working on next week?
Yeah, sure.
Are there other topics that people want to make sure we cover next week? And then another question I had is, what would be helpful for the folks who have just stepped up to work on epics? What would be helpful to help people? What can I or others on this call do to help those folks sort of move forward so that we get a little bit more in terms of the epics being fleshed out and the stories underneath them fleshed out over the next week? I'm not expecting them to be done in a week, but I'm wondering if there are things we can be doing that will help us move the process forward. So email exchanges probably are the right path. Do those discussions on the mailing list. Is everybody signed up for the mailing list already? I will drop, I saw some heads nod no, so I'm going to quickly drop the link to the mailing list into the chat. I had not been looking at what's going on in the chat, but I see I got assigned something. So just so you guys know, if you go to openinfralabs.net, I believe it is, or .org, sorry, there is a link. There's a group of community channel things there. I don't know what this is going to look like when I paste it, but the mailing list is the top one. Thank you, everybody. I hope that was a good meeting for all of you guys. Please get me feedback on things we can be doing better or differently, and we will do them. Get it to Bill and I, because Bill was relatively quiet on this call, but he's a huge driving force in getting these things to happen well. So thank you.
And I encourage, like, let's use the mailing list. It's pretty light right now, and we can make some good progress, have some good discussions there, and call a meeting ad hoc when we need to.
Right.
Cool.
Thanks
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.